She was 6 months pregnant when he left her for his boss's daughter, taking her grandmother's ring, her savings, and her future. 4 years later, she walked into the most exclusive gala in New York City on the arm of a billionaire, with 12 security guards clearing her path. Her ex-husband's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor when he saw her. He had no idea she'd just bought his company. And when he begged her to stop, she looked him dead in the eye and asked, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" This is the story of how a woman went from a garage apartment to a corner office and made everyone who underestimated her wish they hadn't. Stay until the end to see what she did with her grandmother's ring, because that twist will leave you speechless. The ultrasound photos were still warm in Emma Morgan's hand when she opened the apartment door. 6 months pregnant and glowing despite the rain soaking through her coat, she'd stopped at Ryan's favorite Thai restaurant on the way home from the doctor's office. She couldn't wait to tell him they were having a girl. The Louis Vuitton suitcases in the hallway stopped her cold. Emma stood there, water dripping from her umbrella onto the hardwood floor. Her grandmother's estate sale money had paid to refinish. The takeout bag crinkled in her grip. From the living room came the sound of ice clinking in a glass, her favorite glass, the one with the small chip on the rim that she'd been meaning to replace for 2 years. She walked forward slowly, her hand instinctively moving to her rounded belly. Ashley Reed sat on their couch, the vintage velvet couch Emma's grandmother had given them as a wedding present, wearing Emma's bathrobe, the expensive silk one Ryan had bought her last Christmas, the one she saved for special occasions. Ashley's perfectly manicured nails tapped against Emma's chipped glass as she scrolled through her phone with practiced indifference. Ryan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, wearing the suit Emma had ironed for him that morning before her doctor's appointment. He'd kissed her forehead on his way out, told her to text him as soon as she knew the baby's gender. That had been 7 hours ago. "Emma?" Ryan's voice was flat, rehearsed. "Sit down, we need to talk." Emma's fingers tightened on the ultrasound photos. Through the plastic bag, she could smell the pad thai cooling, the lemongrass and lime that usually made her mouth water. Now it made her stomach turn. "I'm 6 months pregnant." The words came out steady, which surprised her. "With your daughter." Ashley looked up from the phone for the first time, examining her nails. "Yeah, Ryan mentioned. Honestly, this is awkward for everyone. Maybe it's better this way. Clean break before the baby complicates things." Emma stared at the woman on her couch in her robe, drinking from her glass. Ashley couldn't have been more than 26 or 27. Her skin had that expensive glow that came from monthly facials and spa treatments, not from working double shifts to put your husband through business school. "Ryan." Emma's voice cracked on his name. "What is this? What's happening?" He turned from the window and Emma saw it then. The decision had already been made. This wasn't a conversation. This was a notification. "This isn't working," Ryan said, his tone clinical, like he was explaining a failed business merger. "You're comfortable, Emma, safe. I need someone who matches my trajectory. Ashley and we're building something bigger." The ultrasound photos slipped from Emma's fingers, scattering across the floor. In one of them, the technician had written, "It's a girl," in cheerful purple marker. The exclamation point seemed to mock her now. "I've been supporting you for 4 years, Emma whispered. "I worked 60-hour weeks so you could get your MBA. I wrote half your thesis. I built the financial models for your internship applications. And I'm grateful for that," Ryan interrupted, already moving toward the suitcases. "My lawyer will contact you. I've been generous with the terms. Don't make this difficult." That's when Emma noticed the ring on Ashley's finger. Not just any ring, Emma's grandmother's ring. The platinum Art Deco piece from the 1920s that had been passed down through 3 generations of strong women in her family. Her grandmother had placed it on Emma's finger the morning of her wedding, tears in her eyes as she said, "3 generations of strong women wore this ring. Women who survived wars and depressions and losses. Now you remember what you come from, Emma girl." "That's my grandmother's ring." Emma's voice came from somewhere far away. "Ryan, you can't. You can't give her my grandmother's ring." Ashley held up her hand, admiring the way the platinum caught the light. "It's gorgeous, isn't it? Ryan said it was a family heirloom." "His family," I assumed. "Does it matter?" "I bought you a replacement ring when we got engaged," Ryan said, already at the door with Ashley beside him. This one? It was always mine to give, and I'm giving it to someone who appreciates ambition. The door closed. Emma stood in the silent apartment, Thai food growing cold on the floor beside her, ultrasound photos scattered like fallen leaves. She lowered herself slowly to the ground, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. She gathered the photos one by one, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to stack them neatly. She pressed them against her chest and touched her belly with her free hand. "It's okay, baby girl," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "It's just you and me now. We'll be okay. We have to be okay." But as she sat on the floor of the apartment that was no longer hers, surrounded by furniture, bought with her paychecks, and memories of a marriage that had apparently been over long before tonight, Emma wasn't sure she believed it. The baby kicked, a small flutter against her palm. Emma closed her eyes and made herself a promise. No matter what came next, her daughter would never see her mother stay broken. She didn't know it yet, but 3 catastrophes were coming, one after another after another. And after that, 18 months of hell. 3 gym, 4 hours of sleep a night, and one decision that would change everything. But first, she had to survive tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. One breath at a time. 8 months later, Emma sat in a leather chair 60 stories above Boston, watching a lawyer slide papers across a mahogany desk. Baby Lily slept in the carrier, strapped to Emma's chest, 3 months old and blissfully unaware that her mother's entire world was about to collapse for the second time. "The prenuptial agreement you signed is quite clear, Miss Morgan." The lawyer's voice had the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Emma blinked. "I never signed a prenup. We were married at City Hall. It was just us and 2 witnesses from the coffee shop next door." The lawyer rotated his laptop screen toward her. "March 17th, 2019, 11:47 p.m. Do you recall this date?" Emma stared at her signature, notarized and official. The date stirred something in her memory. Ryan had woken her up past midnight, frantic about a work emergency. He'd needed her to sign some standard tax forms for his new promotion. She'd been exhausted from a 14-hour shift, working overtime to cover his business school tuition. She'd signed without reading, trusting him like a fool. "Per the agreement," the lawyer continued, each word landing like a small bomb, "the condo at 47 Riverside Drive remains Mr. Stafford's sole property, as his name appears on the deed. The joint savings account containing approximately $47,000 represents Mr. Stafford's reimbursement for educational investments made during the marriage. The 2019 Honda Accord was leased in his name and has been returned. Your settlement consists of $3,000 and your personal effects." Emma's vision blurred at the edges. "That's impossible. I put $30,000 into that account from my salary. I worked doubles for 2 years to save that money." "Which you contributed to your marital household, yes. Mr. Stafford contributed his future earning potential. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad, Miss Morgan. I suggest you retain counsel." The meeting was over. Emma left the building in a daze, Lily starting to fuss against her chest. In the elevator, surrounded by her reflection in polished brass, Emma finally let herself break down. Her hands shook so hard she couldn't comfort her own crying baby. By the time she reached the parking garage, both of them were sobbing. 4 weeks later, Emma sat across from a hiring manager at Morrison Financial Group, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. She'd left Lily at the discount daycare that took 80% of what she'd make in a week. The resume in the interviewer's hands represented her old life. Financial analyst, top of her class, 3 years of solid performance reviews. "I know I have a gap in employment," Emma started, "but I stayed current with market trends. I actually developed a proprietary algorithm for risk assessment." "Ms. Morgan," the interviewer cut her off with a tight smile, "I'm going to be frank with you. Michael Reed called me personally yesterday." The name hit Emma like cold water. "Ashley's father? He's also our largest investor. He mentioned you have certain reliability issues, emotional instability, questionable judgment. He suggested you might be a liability in high-pressure situations." Emma sat perfectly still, her nails digging into her palms. "That's not true. My performance reviews—" "I'm sorry, we're going in a different direction." The rejections came in waves after that. 47 applications, 12 interviews, all ending the same way: overqualified, underexperienced, we'll be in touch, don't call us. One HR representative pulled her aside after an interview and whispered, "Michael Reed has a long reach in this city. You're blacklisted." "I'm sorry." Emma finally took a data entry position at ClearPoint Solutions. $16.50 an hour. No benefits. Night shift. She'd gone from analyzing million-dollar portfolios to inputting insurance claims in a fluorescent-lit office that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. The third catastrophe struck at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. Emma was in the bathroom stall at work, pumping breast milk into bottles she'd label and leave for the daycare worker. When her phone rang, she saw Jen's name and answered immediately. Her best friend never called during Emma's work hours unless something was wrong. "Emma, it's Lily." Jen's voice was pure panic. "She's not breathing right. I'm calling 911. The hospital emergency room lights were too bright, too cold. Emma stood helplessly as doctors intubated her 3-month-old daughter, explaining respiratory distress and NICU transfers in clinical terms that didn't match the terror flooding Emma's veins. "Are you the primary insurance holder?" An administrator appeared with a clipboard. "My ex-husband's insurance, we just divorced. The baby should still be covered." The administrator's expression shifted to practiced pity as she checked her computer. "You were removed from Ryan Stafford's insurance effective March 1st. That was 7 months ago, 3 weeks before your daughter was born. He'd removed her while she was still pregnant, while she was carrying his child." "I don't have coverage," Emma heard herself say. "My new job's insurance starts next month. Can we work something out?" The doctor didn't look up from his chart. "Ma'am, your daughter needs ICU care immediately. We'll treat her regardless, but you'll be responsible for the shot." 3 weeks later, Emma sat in the billing office with Lily finally home and healing in her arms. The statement the clerk handed her had numbers that didn't seem real. $38,400 for NICU care, $4,200 for respiratory therapy, $2,800 for emergency intubation, $1,600 for medications. Total, $47,000, the exact amount Ryan had taken from their savings account. Her phone buzzed with a text message. The first communication from Ryan in 8 months. "Heard Lily was in hospital. Hope she's okay. FYI, my lawyer says I'm not financially responsible for medical bills since you have primary custody. Good luck." 30 seconds later, another message. "Also, don't contact me directly. All communication goes through my attorney." Emma sat in the hospital parking lot, Lily sleeping in her car seat, holding a bill that would take 13 years to pay off at $300 a month. When she started the car, the check engine light came on. That was the moment Emma understood the truth. Ryan hadn't just left her. He'd systematically destroyed her. The prenup she didn't know she'd signed. The blacklist she didn't know existed. The insurance he'd canceled while she was pregnant with his child. This wasn't a breakup. This was a plan. Back at Jen's garage apartment that night, Emma finally let herself completely fall apart. Jen held Lily while Emma sobbed into her hands, the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and primal, the kind that left you hollow after. "Listen to me." Jen's voice was steel-wrapped in compassion. "You are not broken. You are not weak. You are a warrior, Emma, and that baby girl is going to grow up watching you rise from this. When she asks how you survived, you're going to tell her, 'Baby, I didn't just survive. I conquered.'" Emma looked up through her tears. "How? How do I conquer this?" "I don't know yet, but you will, because you have to, because she's watching." Emma looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully in her best friend's arms, unaware of the war being waged for her future. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to spend 18 months in hell. 4 hours of sleep, and one decision that would change everything. But first, she had to learn what she was made of. 18 months crawled by like a prison sentence. Emma's life became a grinding cycle of exhaustion and desperation. She woke at 6 a.m. to feed Lily, dropped her at the discount daycare by 7:30, worked data entry from 8 to 4, picked up Lily by 4:30, then spent evenings doing freelance bookkeeping for small businesses while Lily napped. After putting her daughter to bed at 8, Emma opened her laptop and taught herself to code. YouTube tutorials played on mute while she typed, taking notes in a spiral notebook from the dollar store. She learned Python basics in 3 months, built simple financial models in 6, created database structures in 9. By month 12, she was developing her first algorithm prototype. By month 18, she had something real. The breakthrough came at 1:47 in the morning on a Thursday. Lily slept in the corner of their tiny studio apartment, and Emma stared at her laptop screen until the numbers stopped being numbers and started being a pattern. "Wait," she whispered to the empty room. "Wait, wait, wait." She cross-referenced SEC filing delays with executive stock option exercise dates and overlaid that data with social media sentiment analysis. Then she ran the backtest on 15 years of historical market data. Her algorithm predicted the 2019 flash crash with 91% accuracy, the 2020 market correction at 89%, the 2021 supply chain collapse at 94%. Emma named it Athena for Advanced Threat and Economic Network Analysis. She spent the next 72 hours writing an 18-page white paper, surviving on coffee and the sheer momentum of finally having something that might save them. 3 weeks later, an email arrived that made Emma read it 3 times to make sure it was real. "Ms. Morgan, we're impressed with your analytical background. We'd like to offer you an associate analyst position at Pearson Capital Management. Salary, $68,000 annually. Start date, June 1st. Full benefits included." Emma called Jen, crying tears of relief. For the first time in 2 years, she could afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Lily could have her own room. They could breathe. She signed the lease that weekend, bought Lily a real toddler bed, new, not used, and allowed herself one nice dinner at a casual restaurant where she didn't have to check the prices before ordering. For the first time, Emma whispered to Lily as they fell asleep that night, "We're going to be okay." She had no idea that one phone call was about to destroy everything. May 28th arrived like any other Thursday. Emma was working her final 2 weeks at ClearPoint Solutions, counting down the days until her new job started. Her phone rang at 11:47 a.m. "Mr. Morgan, this is Human Resources at Pearson Capital Management." The voice was professionally apologetic. "I'm calling about your position. I'm afraid there's been an unexpected development. We're restructuring our analyst department, and your position has been eliminated." Emma's blood ran cold. "But I signed a contract. I gave notice at my current job. I signed a lease. We'll honor 1 month of severance. I'm very sorry. This was a board-level decision made yesterday." The call ended. Emma's hands shook as she pulled up LinkedIn on her computer. It took her less than 5 minutes to find it. Michael Reed's investment firm had acquired a 30% equity stake in Pearson Capital Management, dated May 27th, one day before her position was eliminated. She scrolled down and found Ryan's latest post, uploaded that same afternoon. The photo showed him and Ashley at a charity gala, both in black tie, looking like they belonged on a magazine cover. "Thrilled to announce my promotion to Chief Operating Officer at Reed Capital Partners. Couldn't have done it without my incredible wife Ashley and my mentor Michael Reed. Here's to building empires." The comments were a chorus of congratulations. Michael Reed himself had written, "Well deserved, son. You're the future of this company." Ashley had added, "So proud of my husband." Emma stared at the screen for 10 minutes, completely numb. That evening, she sat on the floor of her new empty apartment. She couldn't afford movers, couldn't afford furniture. The first month's rent, plus deposit, plus the overlap with her old apartment had drained her savings. $3,400, everything she had left. Lily's toddler bed sat in its box, unopened. Lily herself was crying because she was hungry. Emma opened the refrigerator, empty except for formula and 2 eggs. She pulled out her food stamps card and tried to buy groceries at the corner store. The card was declined. She'd made $47 too much last month to qualify. Emma sat on the floor in that empty apartment and felt the weight of her entire situation crushed down on her shoulders. She had $200 in her checking account, a hungry toddler, no job, and a lease she couldn't afford. Maybe Ryan had been right. Maybe she was comfortable. Maybe she was small. Maybe she was. Lily toddled over and placed her tiny hand on Emma's face. At 23 months old, she'd just started speaking in real sentences. "Mama, okay?" Emma broke. She sobbed harder than she had at the hospital, harder than she had the night Ryan left, harder than she thought was physically possible. And then she pulled her daughter close and made herself stop. No, baby. Mama's not okay, but Mama's going to be. I promise. That night at 2:34 a.m., Emma couldn't sleep. She opened Instagram for the first time in months and saw Ryan and Ashley's perfect life documented in filtered squares. Ashley's story showed a new Range Rover. Hubby surprised me. Ryan's post featured the rooftop view from their old condo, Emma's condo, with the caption, "Nothing beats sunset views with my queen." The third photo made Emma's hands shake. It was a close-up of Ashley's hand, Emma's grandmother's ring prominently displayed with the caption, "Legacy pieces hit different." Emma zoomed in on the ring. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Remember what you come from, Emma girl." Something inside her snapped. Not sadness, not grief, pure, white-hot, crystallized rage. "You took my home," Emma whispered to her phone screen. "My career, my grandmother's ring. You tried to take my daughter's health. You want me small? You want me comfortable? I'll show you comfortable." She opened her laptop and began to research. Emma spent 2 hours searching for any trace of David Harrison's contact information. Every result told the same story. Reclusive billionaire, no interviews since 2019, private island somewhere off the Maine coast, impossible to reach. She was about to give up when she found it. An obscure 2017 Bloomberg article about Harrison's daughter. Catherine Harrison, called Kate by everyone who knew her, math prodigy, MIT graduate, dead at 28 in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The driver's name was mentioned only briefly, a Wall Street executive who'd received 6 months probation through a plea deal. Expensive lawyers, connected family, the kind of man who destroyed lives and faced no real consequences. Emma read the article 3 times, memorizing details. David Harrison had disappeared from public life 6 months after his daughter's death. No interviews, no conferences, no charity galas, just silence. He hates them, Emma realized, the system that protects men like Ryan. She spent 16 hours researching, following digital breadcrumbs through forums and archived articles. Finally, on a dark web whistleblower forum, she found what she needed: David Harrison's encrypted email address. It came with a warning. Messages are read but rarely answered. Don't waste his time. Emma opened a new email and wrote the most important message of her life. Subject: from one person who lost everything to another. Mr. Harrison, you don't know me. My name is Emma Morgan. I'm a 32-year-old single mother who used to be a financial analyst until I was blacklisted by men who valued connections over competence. I'm not writing to ask for money or a job. I'm writing because I built something that I think your daughter, Kate, would have appreciated. It's a predictive algorithm called Athena. It identifies systemic vulnerabilities in over-leveraged corporate debt structures. I tested it on 15 years of historical data. It would have predicted every major market event from 2008 to 2023 with 91% or better accuracy. But more importantly, it identifies the companies that create those vulnerabilities. The ones run by mediocre men who cook books, hide risks, and destroy lives without consequences. I'm sending you the white paper. Not because I expect a response, but because I think Kate would have wanted someone to finish what people like her started, holding the bastards accountable. Respectfully, Emma Morgan. She attached her 18-page PDF and hit send at 4:47 a.m. Emma closed her laptop and looked at Lily sleeping on an air mattress, the only furniture they owned. "I did something, baby girl," she whispered. "I don't know if it'll work, but I tried." She lay down next to her daughter and closed her eyes, certain that nothing would come of it. She'd be back to data entry tomorrow, or maybe a cashier job, or anything that would keep them fed and housed. Emma had no idea that in exactly 74 hours, her life would change forever. 3 days later, at 11:04 a.m., Emma was working her final 2 weeks at ClearPoint Solutions when her desk phone rang. The old landline never rang. Everyone used email or messaging apps. Her boss yelled from across the room, annoyed. "Morgan, you got a call on the main line. Make it quick." Emma picked up the receiver. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was gravelly, quiet, and unmistakable. even though she'd only heard it in news clips from years ago. Ms. Morgan, David Harrison, your math is elegant. Your thesis is correct. My plane lands at Boston Logan in 90 minutes. Be there. Private Aviation Terminal. Hangar 7. The line went dead. Emma sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hand. Morgan, her boss's voice cut through her shock. You're on the clock. Emma logged out of her computer. She grabbed her purse from under her desk. She walked toward the exit without looking back. Where do you think you're going? Your shift ends at... I quit, Emma said without turning around. She walked out of ClearPoint Solutions and never looked back. The private aviation terminal at Boston Logan was nothing like the main airport. No crowds, no chaos, just hushed efficiency and expensive luggage. Emma stood in her data entry business casual, a pencil skirt from Target and a blouse with a small coffee stain she hadn't noticed until now, feeling completely out of place. A flight attendant approached her, elegant and composed like a diplomat. Ms. Morgan, right this way, please. I didn't bring anything, Emma said, panic creeping into her voice. My daughter is at daycare. I can't just leave. Mr. Harrison arranged for a nanny service to pick up your daughter from daycare. His mother, Mrs. Margaret Harrison, will supervise personally. She raised 4 children. Your daughter will be safe. Emma stopped walking. He did all that in 90 minutes? The flight attendant smiled. Mr. Harrison is efficient. May I offer you champagne? Water and a legal pad if you have one. The Gulfstream G650 interior looked like something from a movie. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, technology Emma couldn't begin to understand. The flight attendant returned with water and a laptop. Mr. Harrison thought you might want to work during the flight. The password is Athena 2024. Everything you need is in the downloads folder. Emma opened the laptop with shaking hands. The downloads folder contained 15 years of proprietary market data from Harrison Global Ventures. Information she'd need $10 million in security clearance to access. A yellow sticky note was attached to the screen in neat handwriting. Impress me. DH. Emma worked for the entire 2-hour flight. She didn't look out the window once. She rewrote her algorithm using his data, refining the predictive model and testing new variables. By the time they landed, she'd improved Athena's accuracy by 3%. The private island appeared below them like something from a different world. Not tropical, rocky and practical, covered in pine trees, a modern house perched on the highest point. This was coastal Maine, not the Caribbean. This was old money that didn't need to prove anything. David Harrison waited on the dock. He was 58 years old but looked 65, worn down by cancer treatments and grief. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a Patagonia fleece, worn boots, looking more like a fisherman than a billionaire. But his eyes were sharp, calculating, missing nothing. Ms. Morgan, he said. Mr. Harrison, Emma replied. Walk with me. They walked in silence to the main house. Inside, the kitchen was warm and smelled like fresh-baked cookies. An elderly woman with white hair and kind eyes was sitting at the table with Lily, who had chocolate on her face and looked happier than Emma had seen her in months. Emma, dear. The woman stood and took Emma's hands. Your daughter is delightful. We made cookies. Well, I made them. She ate most of the dough. Mama, Lily shouted, cookies! Emma felt tears of relief. Thank you. I was so worried. I'm Margaret Harrison, the woman said warmly. David's mother. I raised 4 children and lived to tell the tale. She'll be fine. Now go talk business with my son. I'll handle the important stuff. David led Emma to his office, glass walls overlooking the ocean, minimal furniture, no decorations except a single photograph on the desk. Emma recognized the young woman in the photo. Catherine Harrison. Kate. David sat and gestured for Emma to do the same. You improved Athena by 3% using my data, he said without preamble. Impressive, but your email mentioned something more interesting. Holding the bastards accountable. Tell me about that. Emma hesitated. This was the moment. She could be professional, polished, safe, or she could tell the truth. I'm dying, Ms. Morgan, David said quietly. Prostate cancer, stage 4, metastasized. I have 18 months, maybe 2 years if I'm lucky. I don't have time for professional nonsense. Tell me the truth. Emma took a breath and went all in. My ex-husband destroyed my career to advance his own. He used my work, took credit, then blacklisted me when I became inconvenient. He's chief operating officer of Reed Capital Partners now, promoted on algorithms I built while he slept. Men like him, mediocre, connected, cruel, they win because the system protects them. She paused, meeting David's eyes. Your daughter Kate died because a man like that got drunk, got behind a wheel, and got a good lawyer. I can't bring her back. But Athena can identify every company built on lies. And when we expose them, they fall. The silence stretched between them for 30 seconds. You researched my daughter, David finally said. Yes. Why? Because I needed to know if you'd understand why this matters. Revenge is emotional, but justice? Justice is mathematical. Something shifted in David's expression. Grief and pride mixing together in a way Emma had never seen before. Kate would have liked you, he said softly. She had your fire, your precision. He paused, then continued. Here's my offer. 18 months. You work for me. I give you unlimited resources. My data, my team, my knowledge. You rebuild Athena into a weapon. In exchange, you find the companies that protect men who destroy lives, and you slay them. Starting with Reed Capital Partners. Why me? Emma asked. Because I've interviewed 200 analysts in 10 years. They all want to predict markets to get rich. You want to burn it down and rebuild it better. That's not ambition, Ms. Morgan. That's revolution. And I'm too old to start one alone. What about my daughter? She lives here. My mother already loves her. We have tutors, medical staff, whatever she needs. This island has raised 4 generations of Harrisons. One more won't hurt. Emma felt tears forming. And after 18 months, you become Chief Executive Officer of Harrison Global Ventures European Division. $2 million salary, equity stake, full autonomy. But first, you have to earn it. So, says Morgan, do we have a deal? Emma wiped her eyes, steel returning to her voice. When do we start? David smiled for the first time. We already did. Your first assignment is in the kitchen. Go have dinner with your daughter. Tomorrow, we destroy your old life and build your new one. The next 18 months broke Emma 7 times and rebuilt her into someone unstoppable. The first 3 months were the hardest. David was a brutal teacher, tearing apart every assumption Emma had about finance, about power, about how the world really worked. Your code is sloppy, he'd say, rejecting her work for the 4th time. You're thinking like an employee. Employees predict markets. Chief executives create markets. Start over. Emma would rewrite everything, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and pure determination. Margaret Harrison would bring her coffee at 2 a.m., finding Emma in the lab surrounded by screens and whiteboards. My son sees something in you, Margaret said one of those nights. The same thing he saw in Kate. Don't prove him wrong. In month 2, Emma called Jen at 3 in the morning crying, I can't do this. Emma sobbed into the phone. He's right. I'm thinking too small. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I'm wasting his time? He's dying, Jen. Stop. Jen's voice was firm. Listen to me. You built Athena while working 3 jobs and raising a toddler alone in a garage. What you're feeling isn't failure, Emma. It's growing pains. Your brain is literally rewiring itself. Let it hurt, then get back up. But what if he didn't fly you to Maine because he felt sorry for you? He flew you there because he sees what Ryan was too stupid to see. You're not the anchor. You're the whole ship. Now prove it. The breakthrough came in month 4 at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Emma had been staring at the same data for 6 hours when suddenly the pattern shifted. She stopped trying to predict market crashes and started focusing on what caused them. Corporate debt ratios, executive compensation structures, board nepotism indices. She rebuilt Athena from the ground up with a new focus, X-raying corporate governance to find hidden structural weaknesses. She tested the new model on 50 major corporations, 47 accurate predictions of vulnerability, 3 false positives, 94% accuracy. David reviewed her work in silence for 10 minutes. Now you're thinking like a chief executive officer, he finally said. What did you find? Emma projected a hologram onto the wall. Reed Capital Partners. Reed Capital looks robust, she explained. 8.7 billion in managed assets, A-plus credit rating, diversified portfolio. But Athena found something. 90% of their holdings are tied to European shipping routes dependent on a single trade agreement. That agreement expires in 14 months. So we short them, David asked. No, shorting is gambling. We acquire their debt. Right now, their debt is rated A+ and trading at par. When the trade agreement collapses, their portfolio crashes, margin calls trigger, and we own their debt. We don't just take their assets, we take the company. David's smile was slow and calculating. Kate really would have liked you. Execute it. The next 7 months were a masterclass in corporate warfare. Emma created 40 shell corporations across 12 countries, each buying small pieces of Reed Capital's debt. The purchases were massed to avoid triggering alarms. Total acquisition, $8.7 billion in corporate debt. Reed Capital's board never noticed. In month 12, exactly as Athena predicted, the trade agreement collapsed. Reed Capital's shipping portfolio dropped 34% in 1 week. In month 14, the margin calls began. In month 15, Michael Reed woke up to discover that an unnamed creditor was calling in all his debt, $9 billion he couldn't pay. Emma watched the news coverage from David's office, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. How long until they realize? David asked. The creditor is a Cayman Islands holding company, Emma replied. They won't trace it back to us for another week. By then, we'll offer our solution, full acquisition. And Reed has no choice. No choice at all. The acquisition finalized in month 16. Harrison Global Ventures now owned Reed Capital Partners. The announcement would be made at the Grand Charity Gala in New York, 3 weeks away. David was noticeably weaker now, the cancer taking its toll. But his eyes were still sharp when he looked at Emma. The gala, he said, that's where we announce it. David, you don't have to come. I can present alone. That gala is full of the people who protected the man who killed my daughter. The same people who would have blacklisted you forever if I hadn't intervened. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Are you strong enough? David looked at her with something like pride. Emma, I'm dying, but I'm not dead yet. And I want to see their faces when they realize what we've done, what you've done. This is your victory. I'm just the old man who bought the bullets. You're the one who pulled the trigger. Emma felt her throat tighten. David, thank you for seeing me when no one else did. I didn't see you, Emma. You were already there. I just turned on the light. The door burst open and Lily ran in, now 3.5 years old and full of energy. Grandpa David, Grandma Maggie says dinner. David smiled, a rare, genuine expression. She calls me Grandpa now. Is that okay? Emma asked. Kate would have been 34 now. She'd probably have kids Lily's age. David's eyes were distant. So yes, Emma, it's more than okay. 2 weeks before the gala, Emma stood in front of David's executive team, presenting the strategy. We announced the acquisition at the gala, she explained. Public, high profile, no room for backroom deals. Michael Reed will try to spin this as a hostile takeover, but in front of mayors, senators, and the entire Boston financial elite, he can only respond. Restructuring plans? An executive vice president asked. Immediate. I've identified 23 executives hired through nepotism rather than merit. All terminated. We're cutting 40% of redundant positions, selling toxic assets, and pivoting to sustainable infrastructure. That's aggressive. That's necessary. Reed Capital has been cooking books for 3 years. Once we open the real ledgers, there will be SEC investigations. We need to be the whistleblowers, not the accomplices. And your ex-husband? David asked quietly. Emma didn't hesitate. Ryan Stafford, chief operating officer, hired because he married the boss's daughter. His entire risk management strategy has been hiding debt in shell subsidiaries. He's not just incompetent, he's complicit. Recommendation, immediate termination and a file prepared for the SEC documenting his fraudulent reporting. The room was silent. You know this will destroy him, David said. Yes. And you're okay with that? Emma met his eyes. He destroyed me when I was 6 months pregnant. Took my career, my savings, my grandmother's ring. left me with $47,000 in medical debt for our daughter's emergency care. I'm not destroying him, David. I'm holding him accountable. There's a difference, Draho. David nodded. Good. I just wanted to make sure you knew the difference. Execute the plan. That night, Emma called Jen, needing to hear her best friend's voice. How are you feeling about the koala? Jen asked. Terrified, Emma admitted. What if I see him and I'm not as strong as I think I am? What if I see him with Ashley, wearing my grandmother's ring, and I just break? Then you break for 30 seconds. Then you remember who you are now. You're not the woman he left, Emma. You're the woman who bought his boss's company. They talked for another hour, and Emma shared what she'd discovered about Ashley. The secret donations to LGBTQ charities. The signs of a woman trapped by her father's expectations. I'm not going to destroy her the way Ryan destroyed me, Emma said. When this all goes down, I'm going to give her a way out. 2 days before the gala, Emma tried on her dress for the first time. Sapphire blue Armani, perfectly tailored, a gift from David. She stood in front of the mirror while Margaret helped with the zipper. You look like a queen, dear, Margaret said. Emma stared at her reflection. I don't recognize myself. Good. The woman who walked onto this island 18 months ago needed saving. The woman in that mirror saves herself. What if I'm doing this for the wrong reasons? Emma asked quietly. What if this is just revenge dressed up as justice? Margaret took Emma's hands in her wrinkled ones. Let me ask you something. If Ryan Stafford didn't exist, would you still expose Reed Capital's fraud? Yes. If he'd never hurt you, would you still want to fix a system that protects mediocre men over brilliant women? Yes. Then this isn't revenge, dear. Revenge is hurting someone because they hurt you. Justice is stopping someone from hurting anyone else. You're not going to that gala for you. You're going for every woman who's been erased, discredited, and told she's comfortable when she's actually extraordinary. Emma started crying. I'm scared. Good. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. Now dry your tears. You have a dragon to slay. The Grand Charity Gala at the New York Public Library was everything Ryan Stafford had worked for. As he adjusted his Tom Ford tuxedo in the back of the town car, he felt the weight of his success settle comfortably on his shoulders. This is it, Ash, he said to Ashley beside him. Tonight, your father announces me as his official successor. Chief Operating Officer was just the beginning. Ashley smoothed her $35,000 Oscar de la Renta gown, on loan from the designer, to be returned tomorrow. Smile for the cameras, darling. They posed at the entrance, Instagram stories already posting automatically. Power couple, building empires, living the dream. Ryan's internal monologue played like a victory speech. 5 years ago, I was married to a woman who alphabetized spice racks, who cried during insurance commercials, who thought ambition meant wanting a house in the suburbs. Now I'm here, standing among senators and chief executive officers. All it took was the courage to let go of dead weight. Michael Reed waved from across the marble hall. Ryan, my boy, Senator Whitmore wants to meet you. Come. Ryan squeezed Ashley's hand. This is happening. Ashley gave him a practiced smile and waved. I'll get us champagne. But as soon as Ryan disappeared into the crowd, Ashley's smile fell. She pulled out her phone at the bar and texted someone. I can't do this anymore. The response came immediately. You don't have to. Come home to me. Ashley typed back, after tonight, I promise. She deleted the conversation and ordered vodka instead of champagne. Double, neat. She drank it in one swallow, trying to steady her shaking hands. Her phone buzzed with a then Instagram notification. An anonymous message. I know who you really are, and I'm on your side. A friend. Ashley's blood ran cold. At 7:47 p.m., the string quartet suddenly stopped playing mid-song. The abrupt silence made everyone look up from their conversations and champagne flutes. A security detail moved through the entrance, 12 men in dark suits with earpieces, moving with military precision. They began clearing a path from the main doors to the central podium. Ryan frowned, annoyed. What the hell? Who do they think? A security guard stepped in front of him. Please step aside. I'm Ryan Stafford, Chief Operating Officer of Reed Capital. This is, Sir? The guard's tone left no room for negotiation. "Step aside." Ryan found himself pushed back into the crowd, Ashley beside him, looking embarrassed. "This is humiliating," she whispered. All eyes turned to the entrance as the massive doors opened. Outside, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom idled at the curb, its engine a whisper of power. The driver opened the rear door, and the first person to emerge made the entire room gasp. David Harrison. The reclusive billionaire who hadn't been seen at a public event in 4 years stepped out of the car. He was thinner than his old photographs suggested, grayer, clearly ill. But his presence filled the space like gravity. He wore a simple black tuxedo with no jewelry except an MIT-class ring. He stood by the car door and waited. Then he extended his hand back toward the car. A black high heel emerged first. Simple, elegant, lethal. Then a leg, leading to a sapphire blue Armani gown. The woman who stepped out and took David Harrison's offered arm was not beautiful in the conventional way Ashley was beautiful. Ashley was decoration. This woman was a declaration. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, professional updo. Minimal makeup, simple diamond studs, though no one in the room knew they had belonged to David's late daughter, Kate. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was calm, controlled, powerful. She was someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Ryan's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence like a gunshot. "No," Ryan whispered. That can't be." Ashley looked at the woman on David Harrison's arm. "Who is that? Is she famous?" Ryan's voice came out hollow, broken. "That's Emma. That's my ex-wife." Ashley laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're what? The pregnant loser from the garage apartment? That's impossible. She looks like she owns the room." Emma and David walked forward, security creating a corridor through the stunned crowd. Emma's eyes swept across the assembled elite, senators, mayors, chief executive officers, old money families. Her gaze was steady, unhurried. For one brief second, her eyes met Ryan's. There was no recognition, no anger, no pain, nothing. She looked through him like he was a window, seeing something more important on the other side. Then she continued walking. Ryan stood frozen, his expensive shoes in a puddle of spilled champagne. "She didn't see me. She looked right at me, and she didn't see me." Michael Reed appeared beside them, his face white as chalk. He grabbed Ryan's shoulder hard enough to bruise. "That's her," Michael whispered, his voice shaking. "The woman from the acquisition papers. Hayes. E. Morgan Hayes, that's her." "What acquisition?" Ryan asked, though some part of him already knew the answer. "The one that finalized this afternoon. Harrison Global Ventures bought Reed Capital's debt. All of it. $9 billion. And she," Michael pointed at Emma with a trembling finger, "she's the one who signed the execution order." Ryan's knees buckled. Ashley caught his arm, her own face pale with dawning understanding. Emma and David reached the podium. The mayor of New York rushed over, stumbling in his eagerness to greet them. "Mr. Harrison, Ms. Hayes, what an honor." David shook the mayor's hand with practiced ease. "Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us." David stepped to the microphone. Feedback squealed briefly, then silence fell across the vast marble hall. 400 people held their collective breath. "Good evening." David's voice was quiet but carried perfectly. "I'm not one for parties, but tonight is special. Tonight, Harrison Global Ventures completed a major acquisition. Reed Capital Partners, a firm that manages $8.7 billion in assets, is now fully integrated into our portfolio." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Michael Reed swayed on his feet. "This acquisition," David continued, "was orchestrated by the most brilliant financial mind I've encountered in 40 years. Someone who sees patterns others miss. Someone who understands that real wealth isn't built on risk, it's built on truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Morgan Hayes, Chief Executive Officer of Harrison Global Ventures European Division." Thunderous applause. Emma stepped to the microphone. She didn't smile. She simply waited for silence, commanding the room with her stillness. Ryan stared at her, this woman who used to be his wife, who used to need him, who used to be small and comfortable and safe. This woman who now looked like she could buy and sell everyone in this room without blinking. And he knew with absolute certainty that his perfect life was about to shatter. Emma stood at the podium and let the silence build. She'd learned from David that power isn't loud. It's the space between words where everyone waits to hear what you'll say next. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to everyone here tonight. Her voice was clear, powerful, requiring no microphone adjustment or nervous clearing of throat. For those who don't know me, and I suspect that's most of you, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Emma Catherine Morgan Hayes. 5 years ago, I was a financial analyst at Morrison Group. 4 years ago, I was a single mother working data entry for $16.50 an hour, living in my best friend's garage, raising my daughter alone. The room was absolutely silent. This wasn't the typical gala speech about philanthropy and gratitude. Today, I'm the chief executive officer of a multi-billion-dollar division of Harrison Global Ventures. Some of you might wonder, how does someone go from a garage to a podium in 4 years? The answer is simple: competence. Emma let that word hang in the air. You see, for too long, the financial world has rewarded connections over capability. It has allowed firms to build empires on foundations of sand, hiding toxic assets behind complex paperwork, promoting executives based on who they married rather than what they know. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Emma saw Michael Reed's face turning red. Tonight, we're changing that. Our acquisition of Reed Capital Partners wasn't random. It was surgical. For the past 18 months, my team analyzed their portfolio using proprietary predictive modeling. What we found was disturbing. Emma pulled up a holographic display that materialized in the air above the podium, graphs and charts visible to the entire room. 90% portfolio exposure to a single failing trade route, systematic debt concealment through shell subsidiaries, fraudulent quarterly reporting signed by executive leadership, risk management strategies that existed only on paper. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Reed Capital Partners isn't a success story, it's a ticking time bomb, and we just diffused it. Emma's voice dropped lower, forcing everyone to lean in to hear. Starting Monday, we begin full restructuring. We will eliminate positions created through nepotism. We will expose fraudulent practices, and we will restore ethical standards to an organization that has forgotten what ethics mean. This isn't personal. This is simply accountability. Michael Reed pushed through the crowd, his face purple with rage. This is outrageous. You can't just... Emma didn't even turn to look at him. Mr. Reed, you'll want to check your phone. Your legal team sent you an email approximately 4 minutes ago. Michael fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. The email from his lawyers was brief and terrifying. SEC has opened investigation into Reed Capital based on whistleblower submission. Do not make public statements. Do not, Emma continued as if there had been no interruption. For the record, Harrison Global submitted a comprehensive audit to the Securities and Exchange Commission this morning, time-stamped hours before our acquisition finalized, which protects us as whistleblowers under federal law. Your fraudulent quarterly reports from the past 3 years are now federal evidence, Mr. Reed. Michael Reed stumbled. 2 security guards materialized beside him, helping him to a chair before he collapsed completely. You planned this, he whispered. You planned all of this. No, Mr. Reed, you did. When you signed off on reports you knew were false, when you promoted executives based on family ties rather than merit, when you blacklisted talented analysts because they knew too much. You built this house of cards. I just documented its collapse. Ryan broke away from Ashley and strode toward the podium, desperation making him stupid. Emma! Security moved to intercept, but Emma raised her hand. Let him speak. The guards stopped but remained close. Ryan stood 10 feet from the stage, his perfect hair disheveled, his perfect life crumbling around him. Emma, please. This is insane. You're destroying innocent people's lives, my life. You can't. Emma looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time since entering the gala. Her expression was calm, clinical, almost curious, like she was looking at an interesting specimen under a microscope. I'm sorry, she said clearly. Do I know you? The question landed like a bomb. The entire room, senators, chief executive officers, socialites, power brokers, all stared at the scene unfolding before them. "It's me," Ryan's voice cracked. "It's Ryan Stafford. We were married." Emma turned to her assistant, who stood nearby with a tablet. "Is he on the Reed Capital payroll?" The assistant checked her screen. "Ryan Stafford, Chief Operating Officer, flagged for immediate termination due to fraudulent reporting and risk management failures." Emma looked back at Ryan with detached professionalism. "Ah, then this isn't personal, Mr. Stafford. It's a business decision. Security, please escort." "You're using my algorithm," Ryan shouted, his voice echoing through the marble hall. "That code was mine. You stole it." Emma stopped. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. "Your algorithm, Mr. Stafford?" She pulled out her phone, and suddenly a massive holographic display filled the air above the crowd. Official documents from the United States Copyright Office materialized in three-dimensional detail. Title: Athena Financial Prediction Model, version 1.0. Author: Emma Catherine Morgan. Registration date: March 3, 2019. Registration number: TXU 2-247-891. "This is the algorithm you've been using at Reed Capital for 4 years." Emma's voice was ice. "The one you claimed you developed during your business school program. Except I wrote it while I was 6 months pregnant, while you were sleeping with Ashley Reed in our apartment." The crowd's whispers became a roar. "I copyrighted it under my maiden name 3 weeks after I created it, 6 months before you filed for divorce. Which means, Mr. Stafford, you haven't just been taking credit for my work. You've been committing intellectual property theft. For 4 years, my lawyers will be in touch." Ryan's face went from red to white in seconds. "Emma, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I was wrong. Please, can we just—" "You didn't know?" Emma's voice cut through his pleading. "You didn't know you were using work I created? Or you didn't know you'd get caught?" "I was young. I made mistakes. Mr. Stafford, I haven't thought about you in 18 months. And now that I'm looking at you, I realize I never really knew you at all. You were just a mistake I had to survive long enough to correct. Security, we're done here." Two guards took Ryan by the arms. He struggled against them, all dignity abandoned. "Emma, what about Lily? What about our daughter?" Emma froze. The room went deathly silent. She turned slowly, and for the first time that night, real emotion crossed her face. Not anger, something colder, something final. "Our daughter." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the vast hall. "Lily hasn't had a father for 4 years, Mr. Stafford. She had a sperm donor who abandoned her while she was in a NICU fighting to breathe. She had a man who refused to pay a single medical bill, who changed his number so she couldn't reach him, who removed her from his insurance while she was still inside me." Emma's voice didn't rise, but it cut deeper than any shout could. "You're not her father. You're a cautionary tale I'll tell her when she's old enough to understand that some people choose ambition over love. And when she asks me if she should forgive you, I'll tell her that's her choice to make, not mine, and certainly not yours." Emma nodded to security. Ryan was escorted out through the side door, his protest fading into the night. The room remained silent, stunned. Emma looked out at the crowd, at the senators and chief executive officers and old money families who ran this city, this country, this world. "Are there any questions?" she asked calmly. No one spoke. "Then enjoy your evening. Thank you for your time." Emma stepped down from the podium and disappeared into the crowd with David beside her, security forming a protective bubble around them both. Ryan was gone. Michael Reed was finished. Reed Capital was hers. But Emma wasn't done yet. There was one more person in that room who needed to hear the truth. Emma stepped down from the podium and immediately felt a hand on her arm. She turned, ready to signal security, but stopped when she saw Ashley Reed's face. The Instagram-perfect influencer looked nothing like her photos. Her makeup was streaking, her hands were shaking, and her eyes held something Emma recognized: desperation. "Ms. Hayes," Ashley's voice trembled. "Can we talk, privately? Please, 5 minutes. It's important." "Oh," Emma glanced at David, who gave her a subtle nod. 5 minutes. They found privacy in the ornate ladies' room, all marble and gold fixtures. As soon as the door closed, Ashley removed her jewelry with shaking hands and dropped the facade like a heavy coat. "I'm not going to apologize for marrying him," Ashley said, her voice raw. "You don't need my apology." "Then what do you want?" "To give you something, and to ask for something in return." Ashley opened her clutch with trembling fingers and pulled out a ring. Emma's grandmother's ring. The platinum Art Deco piece glinted under the bathroom lights. "This isn't mine," Ashley said. "It never was." Emma stared at the ring, unable to move. "He said he bought me a replacement. He said—" "He lied." Ashley's voice broke. "He's been wearing it around his neck on a chain for 4 years, kept it hidden from me. I found it last month in his gym bag. When I asked about it, he said it was his mother's. But I looked up your wedding photos online. That's you wearing this ring." Emma took the ring with shaking hands. It felt heavier than she remembered. Or maybe she was just stronger now. "Why are you giving this to me?" Ashley's carefully constructed mask crumbled completely. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "Because I've been where you are. Not the same way, but trapped. My father has controlled every aspect of my life since I was born. Who I date, what I study, who I marry. Ryan was his choice, not mine. I didn't love him. I never loved him. Then why?" "Because I'm gay, Ms. Hayes." Ashley's voice was barely a whisper. "And my father is Michael Reed. Do the math." Silence filled the space between them, heavy with understanding. "Jen," Emma said softly. Ashley's eyes widened. "You know? I've known for 6 months. You two aren't as subtle as you think. And Jen's my best friend. She tells me everything. Eventually." "Are you angry?" Emma felt something like compassion stirring in her chest. "Why would I be angry? You didn't betray me, Ashley. You were a victim of the same man who destroyed my career. Just in a different way." Ashley started crying harder. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was scared. Of my father, of losing everything. And then tonight, watching you walk in here, watching you dismantle my father's empire in 10 minutes, I realized I've been living in fear my whole life. And you turned your fear into power. What are you asking me for?" Ashley wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her perfect skin. "A job. I have a degree in marketing from Columbia. I'm actually good at what I do when I'm not playing Instagram trophy wife. And I have insider knowledge of every dirty deal my father's done for 20 years. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. In exchange, I want out. From my father, from Ryan, from all of it." "And Jen?" Ashley smiled through her tears. "I'm going to ask her to marry me, if she'll have me, which means I need to be able to support myself. I need to be someone she can be proud of." Emma studied Ashley's face, really looked at her for the first time. Behind the influencer facade was a woman who'd been as trapped as Emma had been, just in a gilded cage instead of a garage. "Harrison Global Ventures is opening a New York office," Emma said slowly. "We need a director of strategic communications. Someone who knows the players, understands the game, but wants to change the rules. $180,000 salary. Full benefits. You start Monday." Ashley's eyes went wide. "Really?" "But Ashley," Emma's voice went cold, "if you betray me, or this company, or Jen, I will end you faster than I ended your father. Do we understand each other?" "Yes, God, yes, thank you." They shook hands. Ashley's grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Ashley said again. "For seeing me. Ryan never did. Ryan never saw anyone but himself." Ashley started toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "Ms. Hayes?" "Emma, just Emma." "Emma, then, I need you to know something. That night he left you, I didn't know you were pregnant. I didn't know about your grandmother's ring. I didn't know anything until it was too late. And by then I was trapped too. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I never meant to be part of destroying you." Emma felt something shift in her chest, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "Ashley, we're both victims of men who saw us as accessories instead of people. The difference is we both got out. That's enough." After Ashley left, Emma stood alone in the bathroom, holding her grandmother's ring. She slipped it onto her finger. Perfect fit, just like it had been on her wedding day all those years ago. She closed her eyes and whispered to the grandmother who'd raised her to be strong. Thanks, Grandma. I finally earned it. Emma took a deep breath, fixed her makeup, and walked back into the gala with her head high. She'd won. Reed Capital was hers. Her grandmother's ring was back where it belonged. Ashley was free. But outside those doors, Ryan was waiting, and he had one last thing to say. The service exit opened onto a quiet New York side street at 10:34 p.m. Emma emerged alone. David had left early, exhausted from the evening, and found her driver waiting beside the Tesla. Ryan sat on the curb 20 feet away, his expensive tuxedo rumpled, his tie undone. There was a red mark on his cheek from where Ashley had apparently slapped him. He looked up when Emma appeared, and something in his eyes made her pause. Emma, please, just 5 minutes. Emma turned to her driver. Waiting in the car. The driver hesitated, clearly concerned, but Emma gave him a look that said she could handle this. He retreated to the Tesla, though he kept watching through the windshield. Emma and Ryan stood alone on the empty street, lit by the yellow glow of streetlights. The sounds of the gala were muffled behind thick walls. I don't know what to say, Ryan began. Then don't say anything. I messed up. I know I did. I was wrong about everything. About you, about us, about what matters. Emma's voice was steady. You weren't wrong, Ryan. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose ambition over family, status over love, a ring over a person. Those weren't mistakes. Those were decisions. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Emma remembered from their marriage whenever he was stressed. I was scared. You were so good at everyone thing among all my bag. At coding, at managing money, at being better than me. And I couldn't handle it, so I convinced myself you were the problem. And now? Now I have nothing. No God, no Wimo, no future. Ashley left me in the car right over here. Your lawyer filed intellectual property theft charges. The SEC is investigating. I'm going to lose my license. Probably go to prison. Good, Emma said without heat. Ryan flinched. You really hate me that much? No, Ryan. I don't hate you at all. Hate requires caring, and I don't care about you anymore. You're just a problem I solved. Ryan sat back on the curb, defeated. What about Lily? Can I meet her? Please? I know I don't deserve it, but you're right. You don't deserve it. Silence stretched between them. Emma surprised herself by sitting on the curb beside him, though not too close. They sat like two strangers at a bus stop, separated by 4 years in a universe of bad choices. But she might deserve to know you, Emma said quietly. Someday, when she's old enough to ask questions, when she's old enough to understand that people make terrible choices and sometimes spend the rest of their lives trying to fix them. I want to fix it. Tell me how. Emma pulled out her phone and brought up a QR code. This is a payment portal. You owe $47,000 in medical bills from Lily's NICU stay, $300 a month, automatic withdrawal. You don't miss a payment, not one, for 2 years. I don't have a job. Figure it out. Work at Starbucks. Drive for Uber. Do what I did when you left me with nothing. Prove you can show up. Prove you can be consistent. Prove you can put someone else first for once in your entitled life. And then after 2 years, 24 months of payments, no excuses, no exceptions, I'll consider letting you send Lily a birthday card, not a visit, a card. And if you keep going for another year, maybe a supervised visit for 1 hour. Ryan stared at her. 3 years just to meet my own daughter? She's not your daughter, Ryan. She's my daughter. You donated DNA. I donated everything else. You want to be her father? Earn it. Like I had to earn every single thing I have now. Ryan pulled out his phone with shaking hands and scanned the QR code. First payment, $300. His finger hovered over the submit button. Done, he said, hitting confirm. First payment. Emma stood, brushing off her dress. Good. Don't stop. Emma, wait. Ryan looked up at her from the curb. I need to know. Did you plan all of this? The acquisition, the exposure tonight? Was this all revenge? Emma looked down at him. This man she'd once loved, once trusted, once built a life with. You want the truth? In the beginning, yes. For the first few months after you left, all I wanted was to hurt you the way you hurt me. But then David taught me something. Revenge is what weak people do when they can't build something better. Justice is what strong people do when they're done being victims. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Reed Capital was a corrupt company hurting people. Your father-in-law was blacklisting talented women to protect mediocre men. Your risk management was putting thousands of people's retirement funds at risk. Taking down Reed Capital wasn't revenge, Ryan. It was housekeeping. You being caught in the blast? That was just a bonus. I'm sorry, Ryan whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't pay medical bills. Sorry doesn't raise a 4-year-old alone. Sorry is just a word people say when they finally realize what they lost. Emma turned to walk to her car. Ryan called after her one last time. Emma? She stopped but didn't turn around. What? For what it's worth, you were never comfortable. You were never the anchor. You were always the whole ship. I was just too stupid and scared to be a passenger. Emma turned and looked at him one final time. You're right, you were. But at least you finally see it. That's more than most people manage. She got into the Tesla. The window rolled down halfway. Good luck, Ryan. You're going to need it. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving Ryan sitting on the curb in his ruined tuxedo. He pulled out his phone and checked his banking app. Balance, $1,847. The $300 payment had just gone through. Balance remaining, $1,547. He opened a new browser tab and searched. Starbucks Careers Boston. Tomorrow he'd start rebuilding. It would take years, maybe decades. Maybe he'd never get there. But at least he'd finally start. 2 years later, Emma sat in her corner office at Harrison Global Ventures' London headquarters, watching Lily do homework at the small desk they'd set up by the window. Her daughter was 6 years old now, fierce and brilliant, and everything Emma had hoped she'd be. People asked me if it was worth it, Emma said softly, though Lily was absorbed in her math problems and not really listening. The pain, the struggle, the years of barely surviving. They want to know if revenge tastes as sweet as they imagine. Emma's mind drifted to the past 24 months, to everything that had changed. She thought about the Carter Foundation for Economic Independence, where she now taught financial literacy classes to single mothers every month. 40 women in the last session, all of them fighting the same battles Emma had fought, all of them learning that competence beats connections every time. She thought about Ashley and Jen's wedding 6 months ago. A small courthouse ceremony, nothing like the Instagram perfect events Ashley used to stage. Emma had been the maid of honor, watching her best friend marry a woman who'd found the courage to choose herself. They were adopting a daughter from foster care next month. Emma was going to be the godmother. She thought about Michael Reed, serving 4 years in federal prison for securities fraud. Ashley visited him sometimes, though less frequently now. He'd aged 20 years in 6 months. His empire reduced to a cell in visiting hours. Emma felt no satisfaction in his fall, just a quiet sense of completion. She thought about Ryan, who'd made every single payment. 24 months, never late, never making excuses. He'd sent Lily her first birthday card last week. Lily hadn't opened it yet. It sat on Emma's desk unopened, waiting for the day when Lily would be old enough to make her own choice about whether she wanted to know her father. Ryan worked as a junior accountant now, taking night classes to earn his CPA license. He was rebuilding his life from the ground up, learning what Emma had known all along. Success means nothing if it's built on someone else's destruction. Most of all, Emma thought about David. He died 8 months after the gala, holding on just long enough to see Reed Capital restructured, to see Emma promoted to Global Chief Executive Officer, to see Lily start kindergarten. His last words to Emma had been, Kate would have loved her, and she would have been so proud of you. Emma visited his grave every week, bringing fresh flowers and talking to him like he could still hear her. We did it, David, just like we planned. Mommy? Lily's voice pulled Emma back to the present. What's 12 times 8? Emma smiled. What do you think it is? Lily scrunched up her face, thinking hard. 96? That's my brilliant girl. Lily beamed and went back to her homework, already moving on to the next problem. Emma watched her daughter, this fierce, smart, beautiful child who'd given her a reason to survive when survival seemed impossible. Emma closed her laptop and walked over to Lily, kissing the top of her head. Come on, baby. Let's go home. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. They left the office hand in hand, Lily chattering about her day at school, about her best friend Marcus, about the science fair project she was planning. Emma listened and laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Behind them on Emma's desk, 3 photo frames stood in a row. The first showed Emma holding newborn Lily in the hospital, both of them exhausted and afraid and completely alone. The second showed Emma, Lily, David, and Margaret at Lily's 4th birthday party, the makeshift family they'd built on that main island. And the third was a drawing Lily had made last week, labeled in crayon, "My Mommy, the CEO." The truth was, Emma thought as they walked to the car, this had never really been about revenge. Revenge was about the past, about hurting the people who'd hurt you. What Emma had done was about the future. Ryan had taught her what she wasn't: enough for him, ambitious enough, impressive enough. But Lily had taught her what she was: strong enough, brave enough, more than enough. David had died 8 months after the gala, but his lessons lived on in everything Emma did. She ran a company worth $40 billion. She mentored 200 women through the Carter Foundation. She was teaching Lily that math wasn't just numbers, it was power. People said Emma had gotten revenge, but revenge was about bringing someone down. What Emma had done, she'd built something so high that the people who tried to destroy her couldn't even see her anymore. And that wasn't revenge, that was just flying. Emma buckled Lily into her car seat and got behind the wheel of her practical Tesla. Not a Rolls-Royce, not a status symbol, just a good car that got them where they needed to go. As she pulled out of the parking garage into the London afternoon, Emma caught sight of her reflection in the rearview mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. This wasn't the scared, pregnant woman who'd been abandoned in a rainy apartment. This wasn't the data entry clerk working 3 jobs and surviving on 4 hours of sleep. This wasn't even the woman who'd walked into that gala 2 years ago, armored in designer clothes in cold fury. This was someone new. It was someone who'd been broken and rebuilt herself into something stronger. Someone who'd learned that you don't beat the system by playing its game. You beat it by changing the rules. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Board meeting went great. East Coast division is up 23% this quarter. Also, Jen says hi and wants to know if you're free for dinner Sunday. We have news about the adoption. Emma smiled and sent back a quick response. Sunday works. Can't wait to hear the news. Tell Jen I said hi back. Another text came in, this one from Margaret Harrison. Lily left her stuffed rabbit here last weekend. I've been holding it hostage and demanding regular video calls as ransom. Call your grandmother. I miss you both. Emma laughed out loud. Margaret had insisted they call her Grandma Maggie after David died, saying she'd already lost one daughter and granddaughter and wasn't about to lose another family. She visited London every few months, and Emma and Lily spent every summer on the main island that had once saved their lives. Mama, you're smiling, Lily observed from the back seat. What's funny? Just thinking about how lucky we are, baby girl. Are we rich now? Emma considered the question. We're comfortable. Like Daddy said? Emma's hands tightened on the steering wheel for just a moment. Lily had started asking about Ryan more often lately. Emma had been honest with her, age-appropriately, explaining that sometimes people make mistakes and have to spend a long time learning how to be better. Your daddy was wrong about what comfortable means, Emma said carefully. Being comfortable doesn't mean being small or scared or settling for less than you deserve. Being comfortable means being confident in who you are. It means building a life you're proud of. That kind of comfortable? Yes, baby, we're very comfortable. Good, Lily said, satisfied with the answer. I like being comfortable. Can we get mint chocolate chip? We can get whatever flavor you want. They drove through London traffic, the city alive with movement and possibility. Emma thought about how far they'd come from that empty Boston apartment, from those days when she'd counted pennies to buy formula and wondered if they'd survive another month. She thought about the night she'd sent that email to David Harrison at 4:47 in the morning, certain nothing would come of it, just desperate enough to try anyway. That single act of defiance had changed everything. But it wasn't just David who'd saved her. It was Jen who'd let them live in her garage and never made Emma feel like a burden. It was Margaret who'd welcomed them with open arms and taught Emma that family was what you built, not just what you were born into. It was Ashley who'd found her own courage by watching Emma's example. It was even Ryan in a twisted way, because his betrayal had forced Emma to discover a strength she'd never known she possessed. And most of all, it was Lily, this tiny human who'd needed Emma so desperately that failure simply wasn't an option. Emma had survived for Lily. She'd fought for Lily. She'd built an empire for Lily. But somewhere along the way, she'd also done it for herself. They got their ice cream, mint chocolate chip for Lily, dark chocolate for Emma, and sat in the small park near their flat. It was a perfect London afternoon, sunny and mild, the kind of day that made you forget about rain and fog and cold. "Mama?" Lily asked, chocolate already smeared on her face. "When I grow up, can I work with you?" Emma's heart swelled. "You can do anything you want when you grow up, baby. Anything at all. I want to be like you, smart and strong and in charge." "You're already smart and strong," Emma said, wiping chocolate off Lily's chin. "The in charge part will come. And I want to help people like you do, with your foundation." Emma pulled Lily close, breathing in the smell of her daughter's shampoo and the sweetness of ice cream. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching other families play in the park. Emma saw mothers pushing strollers, fathers playing catch with their kids, grandparents supervising from benches, normal families living normal lives. Emma and Lily weren't normal, not by any traditional measure. They'd been through fire and come out forged into something new. But they were family, and they were happy, and that was enough. More than enough. Emma's phone buzzed one more time. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Payment confirmation. Month 25 of 36. Thank you for the opportunity to make this right. R. Ryan, still paying, still trying." Emma deleted the text without responding. She'd told him what he needed to do, and he was doing it. In another 11 months, if he kept it up, she'd consider letting him send another birthday card. In another year after that, maybe a supervised visit. Maybe. That was Lily's choice to make when she was old enough. Emma wouldn't force forgiveness or relationship or anything else. She'd simply give Lily all the information when the time came and let her brilliant, strong daughter decide for herself. "Time to go home?" Emma asked. "Can we walk? It's so nice out." Absolutely. They walked hand in hand through the London streets, Lily skipping and chattering, Emma listening and smiling. They passed the tube station where Emma had first arrived in London 3 years ago, terrified and excited and barely believing her life had changed so dramatically. They passed the coffee shop where Emma had spent countless early mornings on reviewing acquisition documents and planning Reed Capital's downfall. They passed the small playground where Lily had made her first London friend. Every block held a memory of rebuilding, of healing, of becoming. When they reached their flat, a beautiful 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood, nothing ostentatious but solidly, comfortably theirs, Emma felt that familiar sense of peace settle over her. This was home, not the apartment she'd shared with Ryan, not the garage where they'd struggled to survive, not even the main island where they'd been transformed. This home they'd built themselves, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. Emma made dinner while Lily did more homework. They ate together, talking about everything and nothing. They gave Lily her bath, read 3 bedtime stories, and tucked her in with her beloved stuffed rabbit that Margaret had mailed back with a ransom note that made Lily giggle. "Mama?" Lily asked sleepily. "Are you happy?" Emma smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead. "Yes, baby, I'm very happy." "Good. I love you, Mama." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky." Lily drifted off to sleep, and Emma sat in the chair beside her bed for a long time, just watching her breathe. 6 years ago, she'd sat in a hospital chair watching the same child fight for every breath in a NICU, terrified they wouldn't make it. Now look at them. Emma finally got up and went to her own room. She changed out of her work clothes and into comfortable pajamas. She made herself tea and sat on her small balcony, looking out over the London skyline. Her phone buzzed with one last notification, an email from the Carter Foundation's executive director. "Emma, we just hit 5,000 women served through the foundation. 5,000 single mothers who now have financial literacy skills, small business loans, and childcare support. Because of you. Because you turned your pain into purpose. Thank you. Emma read the email 3 times, tears streaming down her face. 5,000 women, 5,000 families, 5,000 chances at a better life. That was what it had all been for. Not revenge, not even justice, really. Just the simple, radical act of making sure no other woman had to go through what she'd gone through alone. Emma thought about Ryan sitting on that curb 2 years ago, broken and humiliated. She thought about Michael Reed in his prison cell. She thought about Ashley finding the courage to choose love over fear. She thought about David Harrison, who'd given Emma the tools to transform her pain into power, and then died knowing his daughter's legacy lived on. She thought about the women in her financial literacy classes, their faces so like her own face had been, exhausted, desperate, determined. She thought about the businesses they were building, the futures they were creating, the cycles they were breaking. People said Emma had gotten revenge on the man who'd destroyed her. But revenge was petty. Revenge was small. Revenge was looking backward. What Emma had done was look forward. She'd taken her pain and turned it into a foundation that helped thousands. She'd taken her humiliation and turned it into a company that rewarded competence over connections. She'd taken her grandmother's ring back, yes, but more importantly, she'd lived up to what that ring represented. Generations of strong women who survived and thrived and built something lasting. Emma was flying now, not because she'd brought Ryan down, but because she'd built herself up so high that his opinions simply didn't matter anymore. And that, Emma thought as she finished her tea and went to bed, was the real victory. Not revenge, just flying. The moon was full and bright over London that night, casting silver light through Emma's window. She fell asleep quickly, dreamlessly, the kind of deep sleep that only comes when you have nothing left to fear and nothing left to prove. In the morning, there would be board meetings and foundation events, and all the responsibilities of running a multi-billion-dollar empire. There would be challenges and setbacks and new battles to fight through. But tonight, Emma Morgan Hayes slept peacefully in the home she'd built, in the life she'd earned, with her daughter safe down the hall, and her grandmother's ring on her finger, and her future stretching out before her like an open sky. She'd survived. She'd conquered. She'd flown, and she was just getting started.